Happy Thursday, everyone. Welcome into the Hog Roundup. I'm Evan Kamiko alongside ESPN Arkansas's Tye Richardson. Tye, welcome back to the station. Fun that we're doing this 2 weeks in a row. We've got it off and we've got it rolling again. Good to see you. How you been?
Happy to be here, man. Excited about this upcoming game. Probably the only time that Notre Dame's going to be here in Fayetteville for a game. You get them in 28 on the road in South Bend. And I know Arkansas and I know Sam Pittman's been talking about all week. Chance to play and beat a storied program this weekend.
Let's start with how last week ended, right? Let's talk about the Memphis game. To you, what really stood out as to, oh man, like it just seems like the same story over and over again. You lose the turnover battle, a costly one at the end of the game, and you shoot yourself in the foot, and now you're sitting here instead of maybe being 4-0 right now, and the narrative is, well, can Arkansas, is there a top 25 team? Can they beat Notre Dame, put themselves in the college football playoff? Is Sam Pittman now coaching for his job?
Well, I confirmed this with Andrew Hutchinson earlier this week because you see seeds on Twitter and you're like, I don't know if that's true. But Arkansas since 2020, unfortunately, under Sam Pittman, has led the FBS in fumbles. And the last 2 weeks have been extremely costly. Once in Oxford, once in Memphis. And unless ESPN Stats and Info has it wrong, that was Mike Washington's first career fumble.
Wow.
Which goes to show you that it's even happening to something like that. So we could talk about curses or various things, but at the end of the day, turnovers cost you again. It's been kind of a series of events when you think about the 7-19 one-score records. But you've got a chance to redeem that here. Yes, you'd love to be 3-1 or 4-0 heading into this Notre Dame game. Yes, some of the shine, some of the lusters come out. But that's why football's great, because the next week you can make up for it, and you're back in your home stadium. First time in 28 days. From August 30th to September the 27th. Crazy how long it's been since they've been here in Fayetteville.
And you're an Arkansas guy through and through. Like, how important is that they're back on this campus? And again, as somebody who just graduated college, like, I understand it from the standpoint of, like, man, I haven't been able to watch this football team tailgates here. So, like, for you, how important is it that this team is coming back? Because they need the energy, because you've been on the road the last 2 weeks, and who provides the energy? The fans do.
Well, especially since, Indiana crushed the Illinois, 63-7?
63-10,
That was
fun to watch.
What a performance from Kirk Cignetti and the Hoosiers in that one. But yeah, as far as it being here, there's potential that the last game ever's been played in War Memorial Stadium. You've got the 2026 schedule that we'll talk, I know, about coming up. 5 games at home in the SEC this next year. But you've got this game, you've got the bye, go to Knoxville. Then you got 3 straight home games, Texas A&M, Auburn, and Mississippi State. So there's an opportunity if you're Sam Pittman in Arkansas where you could go on a run. Do I think they're going to win in Knoxville? No. Do I think they're going to win on Saturday? I really do. I said that starting really on Tuesday. I feel good about this game. You think about the betting line. You think about the lack of defense for both sides. It's a good quarterback competition between C.J. Carr and Taylon Green. I think as a fan base, like I've talked to fans, some aren't going. My boss, for example, gave up Ryder Cup tickets to be in the house. Because
that's a hot ticket to give up. I had Ryder Cup tickets, and I had to give them up.
Well, you're working, so it's part of it. But,
yeah, exactly.
Both events would be great, but this really isn't just it's an event. Notre Dame fans have already here. You probably talked to some of them. I talked to some of them today. This is something I know they're looking forward to, and a lot of Arkansas fans are looking forward to. Plus, you have the Lou Holtz dynamic, who I know is going to be in the house as well.
Which will be really fun. He obviously coached at Arkansas, and everyone knows him from his time at Notre Dame. Even though I am not a Notre Dame fan, not a Notre Dame guy. Whatever. The Irish, they beat us in the college football playoff. Yeah. That's the one thing, so I'm still salty about it. But let's look at Arkansas and Notre Dame in the matchup on the field. Where can the Hogs have an advantage in this game? Because like you've already mentioned, it's a really close. The two quarterbacks are really neck and neck. Obviously, you've got to give the edge to Jeremiah Love when it comes to the backfield. But where can Arkansas have the advantage over Notre Dame?
And really, him and Price combo. That's one of the best tandems, if not.
I think Price had like 4 touchdowns last week total.
Yeah, you think and kick returns. You got to watch that. Arkansas hasn't initially had much success kickoff returns or punt returns. Someone's got to block for Cam Shakes. I know we've talked about that.
I was just about to bring that up.
But, this combination is going to be lethal, especially you alluded to Lewis and Sutton Smith both going over 100 yards last week. Man, I keep hearing from the defense, we got to get to basics, we got to communicate. Then do it this week. I think Arkansas fans are so sick of waiting and hearing the same rhetoric, hearing the same thoughts over and over. Either you're just not good or you're finally going to figure it out. And if you're going to do it, it might as well be against maybe the best backfield duo in college football in your home stadium, where Sam Pittman has been up and down. I know there's a lot of tough competition you play in the SEC. You can make a case they battled and been more physical on the road than at times at home. So hopefully this will be one of these marquee wins that he can add to his resume come Saturday afternoon.
I think the funny reality is that, like, Arkansas fans talk about being 2-2 and the world is burning. Let's fire Sam Pittman. Let's clean house. All of this stuff, all the way up to the top. But what's the perception going to be if this Arkansas team wins this weekend? Because that's something that I think all fans are starting to throw out. Now, there are some with confidence. Mike Irwin did come on before the season. I asked him for his bold take, and he said Arkansas is going to beat Notre Dame at home. So there is some, I wouldn't say delusion to it, but there is a real feeling that Arkansas might win this game because of how Notre Dame's look. They've been hit or miss. You lose to Miami in a close game, another close game to Texas A&M a couple of weeks ago, then they finally beat Purdue. But what happens if Arkansas wins this game? Where does the narrative go for Sam Pittman and this team? Is it like Tennessee last year where we're like, okay, he might have just bought himself another year?
Yeah, I think to that initial question, you think about where the bye weekend is placed. So if you win this game, you can have some good things. And I know Tennessee's also going to be on a bye week, but where they play you, kind of like they were last year. But emotions could boil over if they lose, and you've got all this time to sulk now. You can't just play a team the next week. You're thinking about these past 3 losses, because I think if Arkansas loses on Saturday, it's going to be a close game. I personally think they're going to win, kind of like your coworker Mike Irwin does, but you just put yourself in a situation if you're Sam Pittman. I know that whether it's a hot board on CBSSports.com or it's being talked about with the Board of Trustees meeting and stuff, there's a lot of different variables going on. He's talked about keeping the focus and not worried about the outside noise and whatnot. Well, you know how you shut that up is you win on Saturday. And then, like you said, the narrative could change. I don't know if one win against Notre Dame necessarily changes the entire narrative of this fan base. I think some people that just want him gone, it doesn't really matter what he does. But it gets you a step in the right direction when you look at that schedule and you say, how do they get bowl eligible? It has to start with the win, because you've got 7 SEC games after this, and you think about some of the away atmospheres in Knoxville, in Austin, and of course this upcoming game against the Tennessee Volunteers, 2.5 weeks in Knoxville. It's not easy when you think about the games that they have left.
And it's funny when you look at the schedule, right? Tennessee, you don't think it's a win, but their defense hasn't looked great.
Exactly.
You look at that Georgia game. That was a game that was, like 41-38 at the end. So and that was in Knoxville. So there's a chance you can go and upset the Volunteers for a second straight year. Then you're coming back home, to your point, and you're facing Mississippi State, who's a surprising 4-0 team. I think that's November 1st. You're facing Auburn before then and Texas A&M. So it's a really interesting kind of inflection point, I think, early on in the season with this Notre Dame game. And unfortunately, it's not an SEC game. It's a non-conference game. But still, regardless, Marcus Freeman's going to have a great team, and that team's going to come in here ready to go. Let's talk about the defense right now really quickly, and Travis Williams. What does that unit have to show you? Konai Walker may or may not be back this weekend. What about the secondary has to be better?
Well, Sam Pittman said last night on his radio show that they're pretty much healthy in the 2D. So it sounds like Konai, I know, like, we don't get an injury report being that they're not playing an SEC opponent, but it sounds like they're healthy. And so David Oakey's going to play more snaps. Quincy Rhodes played more snaps, and he had 2 sacks in this game last week? He was a wrecking ball. You had Marcus Freeman. One of the only players he mentioned by name was Quincy Rhodes. So you know what they're going to try and do to derail him. But it's got to be collectively. If you look at what Arkansas has done in really the last 2 games, which are the only ones that matter because they were close, they have been in the situations to make a play, whether it's on Chambliss. Like, Kawana Lacey didn't really have a great game, Ole Miss running back. But then last week, whether it was Lewis or Sutton Smith, they were in the backfield on several occasions. Just couldn't bring them down. That long touchdown in the 4th quarter, Sorey had him in the backfield and lost. And I'm not putting that all on Xavier Sorey, which I know he's probably as hacked off as anyone the way he's played. You could tell after that first game he was disgusted with his play. But they've been in the right situations. You got to make the play. Whether it's wrapping up a backup quarterback on 3rd and 7 when you got him stuck, or I don't know, stopping a guy with one ankle on the road on 3rd and 7 in Oxford. There have been situations where the defense has put itself in a place where they can get off the field. They just haven't been able to.
3rd down, I think, is going to be so key in this game. To your point, can you get him to 3rd and long, and can you hold him? Can you not let him convert? Because we talked about it last week. We saw so many times in that Ole Miss game where the Rebels would have a 3rd and long and they would convert. And it was the same thing in Memphis, 3rd and longs. You've got him pinned. And whether that's the offense and Taylor Green taking a bad sack in the second half, or the defense, like, you've got to be able to stop 3rd down, and especially 3rd and long. Last question we go before the break. The guy behind us, Taylor Green, what does he have to do this weekend? where can he be successful? Because we saw the offense go stagnant in the second half of that Memphis game.
Yeah, 10 points the last two halves. This guy has to play more like he did in Oxford than he did in Memphis in that second half. The 2 interceptions, so costly. Didn't really come back to bite you when you threw him against Arkansas State, but 4 interceptions on the year. So he's got to not revert to 2024 Taylor Green.
Yeah.
And that, with what he has to do, he knows, because let's think about it, 31 and 36 points. He knows, I got to score 42 for us to win today. And that's just in his head, in his psyche. And I think the offense kind of knows that. It's like, man, we got to. So there's a lot of added pressure in the sense of, hey, this is on us. And unfortunately, unless something inexplicable happens, it's probably going to be like that the remaining games on your schedule. So he's got to play within himself. He's got to trust that highly regarded pass blocking offensive line, which Pro Football Focus has, is I think the best in the country right now. Have they been as great run blocking as maybe we thought? No. But I mean, Talon still has, I think, 300 plus yards through 4 games. So I think it's Talon. It's about not narrowing in or not locking in on Omega Blake, which he's done. He did last week. Trusting his offensive line, because they only gave up 1 sack against Memphis, even though it proved costly, as you brought out. And just knowing, hey, like, you can't, even though there is pressure and everyone knows it, it's like you've got to somehow push that aside and say, hey, boys, let's just go play football.
Yeah, it's the pressure is privilege. Pressure makes diamonds. I also love that you brought up the offensive line, because that's something I don't think people at home are talking enough about. And we'll talk a little bit about the O-line coming up on the other side of a break. But as my producer is saying in my ear, we've got to get going and go to our sponsors. We'll be right back with the Hog Roundup when we return. Welcome back to the Hog Roundup on this beautiful Thursday in Northwest Arkansas here at our PTN studios. Unfortunately, we're not outside, Ty. It'd be really nice to be out there right now. Low 70s. Yeah. Weather isn't going to be too bad this weekend. I know there was talks of the weather being bad last week in Memphis and maybe being anything, but you don't think about it, because at the end of the day, the offense still scored 30-plus points. And the offensive line, it's something we teased before we went to break. Let's talk about it. How impressive is it that this offensive line is back to where a Sam Pittman offensive line should be?
Yeah, I saw Fernando Carmona Jr. was also named as that academic semifinalist.
Yeah, the William V. Campbell Trophy.
Like the academic equivalent for that. So he's excelling. Corey Robinson's excelling. Caden Kittler's excelling. And think about two guys in our own backyard, and Kobe Branham and Amarion Harris, who have been really good. So I got a little worried. Kobe looked like he twisted his ankle or something in that game, but I think he's going to be good to go for this weekend. So they've been really good and impressive. Now, the deal with that is you can't just do it a third of the season. You got to do it the rest of the way.
Right.
And so you've got to give them credit. I think that Sam Pittman and Bobby Petrino, Eric Mateos would tell you there needs to be some improvement in run blocking at times. You feel like that. And I get sometimes, whether it's the defensive coordinator calling the right blitz or you just get pressure, you get stacked up every once in a while. But I think as an Arkansas fan, you'd like to see maybe some not just Talon taking off and going for 15, but maybe some bigger holes for Mike Washington and also Braylon Russell, like you saw Mike take off in that Ole Miss game.
Braylon Russell, let's talk about him for a second. I know there's been a lot in the media about his dad and whatnot. We're not talking about any of that. That's not important. I want to ask about usage in the second half. He had a great first half, I believe 47 or so yards in the first half, and then was kind of quiet in the second half. We didn't see him. Mike Washington was in control of that last drive of the game, but when you get down to the red zone, would you like to see a little bit more Braylon Russell, maybe even used in general in this game against Notre Dame?
Yeah, I think it doesn't really matter to me. Like, if Price has the hot hand on Saturday, then Marcus Freeman and company are going to feed him the ball, just as you would say with Jeremiah Love. It's just part of it. So you have a cool situation for Arkansas if you're Colby Smith and Bobby Petrino, where you've got two guys with different skill sets. And Braylon is that bruiser and broke probably, 7 tackles in that game, if not more, on Saturday. And I was just surprised, like so many of us were, that he didn't get the football more. Mike didn't play bad. Let's go back and watch the tape. They were mauling that Memphis defensive line for a good chunk of that drive prior to his fumble. And so it's like you're putting all this on, like, why didn't you play Russell? It'd be one thing if one kid wasn't having success, but in that drive Mike Washington was. There's always the second guess, there's always whatnot. But based on what Sam Pittman said on Saturday, Monday, and Wednesday, I would expect that you're going to see a heavy dosage of Braylon Russell, especially against a defense that's not holding run, holding pass, or or really doing anything for the most part this season.
I think we're going to see a lot of yards this weekend coming on the ground for really both teams versus in the air. Maybe Arkansas will have a little more air yardage, but Notre Dame, Arkansas, you think it's going to be a running game. Hey, let's move on. Let's talk about the schedule. We'll pop up what's been going on the last couple of weeks. So remember, now the 2026 to 2029 schedule is officially out for Arkansas football. The SEC is going to 9 conference games instead of 8. You can thank Curt Cignetti in the Big Ten for that. I don't know if that's real. Hog fans, don't get mad at me because I said that. But here we go, Tye. Here's what you're looking at right now. 2026 and 2028. It's the same opponents, but inverse home and away. Same with 27 and 29. The 2026 schedule, you're home against LSU and Missouri. Texas is your 3rd annual rivalry. You'll see those teams all 4 of those years. You're on the road at Texas in 26. Those flip in 27. And then that 2026, as we finish up, you're home against Georgia, South Carolina, and Tennessee. And then the Hogs are on the road, Auburn, A&M, and Vanderbilt. 2027, you're at home against Alabama, Kentucky, and Ole Miss, and you're on the road at Florida, Mississippi State, and Oklahoma. Which year are you most excited about when you see this new schedule?
Well, I think that when you see Georgia, who's been probably the best team the last 4 or 5 years in college football, coming back to Fayetteville for the first time since 2020, that's awesome. And Florida coming here in 2029. In terms of the one that maybe I'm most excited about, it has to be going to Norman. It has to be that 2027 year. I guess they'll come back to Fayetteville in 2029 because when Arkansas and Texas joined the league, or excuse me, Texas and Oklahoma joined the league, and that was reported initially at SEC Media Days. I know everyone's excited about Texas, but guys, the closest institution in the SEC is Norman to Fayetteville. And I was a little bummed out that I saw that they weren't on the schedule next year. Again, they're here, or you're going there to Norman and to Gaylord Memorial in 2027. But that's a school. I heard Lane Kiffin talking about this week, and here's what I'm pushing for. I'm already pushing for this. So you got Texas, LSU, and Missouri as your 3 permanent opponents. That's set through 29 with a chance to get things different in 2030. They're going to keep you with Missouri till you die in this league. So why not add Oklahoma and Ole Miss, flip the LSU and Texas, and have those 2 as your permanent opponents? Kiffin doesn't want to play Oklahoma each and every year. There's no history there. They just kind of got paired together. So why not, after 4 years, get you with the Rebels and the Sooners? That makes a lot of sense to me. I think it's an excitement level either way. You go to Utah, to Salt Lake City next year. So you're just going to have a fun schedule in the remaining next couple of years, especially with either 4 or 5 big marquee games in the SEC at home.
And what's interesting is Arkansas is going to go to Kentucky for the first time, I think, since like 2012. In 2 years, I believe, or 4 years. Don't quote me. I don't have the schedule memorized. I'm not that good with numbers and graphs. That's a really tough graph to memorize.
You got Joker Phillips, I think, let go after you beat him. That was Arkansas's. If you go back, that was John L. Smith. Arkansas, that was their only SEC win that year.
Yeah.
I believe, yeah.
Crazy. So that's coming back. I'm interested to see South Carolina as well. Shane Beamer and the Gamecocks. You haven't seen them play Arkansas. It feels like since I have been here, and maybe even since the turn of the century. I don't know if they've played each other in the 2020s, so that'll be really fun to watch. It's really interesting that you bring up the 3 annual rivalry stuff, because that's something that, everybody knew that you're going to be paired with Missouri. I kind of said on TikTok the other day that, Arkansas was going to get screwed no matter what. Because if you look at the history of who they had, it's Missouri, right? That's far and away the one that the SEC themselves is pushing. Whether rightfully so, probably not, because Missouri, they're happy because they've had Arkansas's number the last 10 years. Arkansas's mad because Missouri thinks it's a rivalry, and vice versa. And then you knew you were going to have Texas. So the third one was the question mark, and it was LSU. But that game was never going to be a hand-me. You were never going to get Kentucky. You were never going to get Vanderbilt. It was either going to be Ole Miss or LSU. Maybe you could have made an argument for South Carolina because they joined the SEC together back in '92. So maybe that could have been the argument, but either way, that third team wasn't going to be the gimme, because right now, Arkansas might be that gimme game.
Yeah, and when an opponent looks seeing Arkansas on the schedule, like Missouri, LSU, and Texas, they're like, let's go. That's great. And you want to obviously change that perception if you're Sam Pittman and this staff, and what that looks like for years to come. So it'll be, when you think about Austin this year, Austin next year, and then you go, or they come here, I should say, in 2028, kind of like you played them in 21, and then they came here in 2024. I just think the dynamic for a young man that's a true freshman. Now, we're not going to see a lot of 4-year or 5-year players anymore, but an opportunity, if you come to Fayetteville, if you go to Columbia, if you go to Austin, if you go to any SEC school, you got a chance to go to every venue and play every team.
Yeah.
That's what Greg Sankey and his staff have been pushing. And is it going to happen a lot? Probably not because of what I just said, but at least that opportunity is there for any young man that wants to play football in the SEC.
Absolutely. It's an exciting time in the SEC. We got a couple minutes to go, Tye. Let's kind of shift gears. I want to talk a little bit men's basketball. Earlier today, it was announced that the CareSource Invitational is going to happen between Arkansas and Cincinnati. John Calipari's team, right? It's super early. I know we've talked a lot of football on this. Where's your excitement level at right now for men's basketball?
It's through the roof, and it should be. Arkansas's got a bunch of returnees. When you think about Trevin Brazile, you think about DJ Wagner, you think about Carter Knox, you think about Billy Richmond. You've got guys that saw tournament action, excelled as young freshmen in the case of Carter and Billy. You think about how veteran-laden Trevin is now when I think it's fifth year of college basketball.
Something like that.
Yeah, DJ's going into his third year. You've added pieces like Malik Thomas, Isaiah Sealy, Darius Aka, and then you had some beef, Nick Pringle, and Malik Ewan, guys that and then, by the way, let's just go get a couple 7-footers on top of that to bolster the front line. So I think if you're John Calipari, one of the things that you have to like if you're an Arkansas fan, he's not afraid to play anyone. You got all Elite Eight teams on your schedule. You're playing the likes of Michigan State, Duke. You obviously got paired with Louisville, which is a 6 o'clock game on a Wednesday night here in Fayetteville at Bud Walton Arena. You should be super excited. Now, I guess the only drawback, the only play is a lot of these games, with the exception of Louisville, aren't in Bud Walton Arena, but it's still, I would think, when SEC plays rolls around, and I honestly think you got a pretty favorable, maybe not to the baseball extent, you got a pretty favorable SEC basketball schedule, except you somehow, somewhere are still going to Tuscaloosa. My goodness, man.
It's crazy because you bring up baseball, and I was looking at the schedule the other week, and it's like, man, you miss Vanderbilt, LSU, Tennessee. I think they missed Texas too.
And A&M.
And like that is absurd how like if you're Dave Van Horn right now, you're like going to laugh your way to hosting a regional, which is absolutely unfair.
I said someone, I forget who it was, but someone told me it's like they are willing Dave Van Horn to Omaha to win a national championship. And I think the flip side, so there's no baseball no baseball person that I think is more credible and that knows more than Phil Elson. I'm lucky that I get to work with him each and every day. And I asked him, I was like, man, so help me on this. You're not playing what many consider to be kind of the blue bloods, the creme de la creme of the SEC. And he's like, well, Auburn was in the College World Series 2 years ago, Kentucky. And he started pointing at the teams that were on our schedule. And listen, he knows about their rosters a lot more and the coaching staff a lot more than I do. On the surface, it looks like you got the easiest schedule in the league, but reality is SEC baseball is pretty good. And despite not having those teams you just mentioned, it's still not. Arkansas is not going to go undefeated like they did in 2021 with Kevin Kopps and that baseball team. But hopefully they're prepared if they do face an SEC team in the Supers, that they'll be ready to go at that point.
Last thing before we go, Woo Pig Weekend. You've got they're honoring people tomorrow night to go into the Arkansas Hall of Fame. Ryan Mallett, one of those names. What are you most looking forward to this weekend?
I think it's just the idea of playing an opponent you've never played. I got a chance actually to go to South Bend last year and experience what a Notre Dame atmosphere and game was like, and it was awesome, just as a casual observer and a college football fan. So I think it's like you mentioned, you've got so many things. You've got baseball events, softball events, volleyball, I think soccer as well. So you've got all these different things that have lined up and perfectly like symmetry fit for this weekend. The only thing you need is a football win to go along with that, Evan. And so hopefully Arkansas will be able to come together, bounce back. And I think I'm going to be honest, if I'm an Arkansas fan, and maybe our audience doesn't feel this way, I don't want my offense to have the ball at the end of that game. Legitimately, I would rather, as bad as they've been in last two games, I would rather have the Arkansas defense with the chance to stop C.J. Carr and that Notre Dame offense at the tail end of that game. And that may be way off and when people's thought process and everything else, but to just maybe give them a chance to wash the bad taste out of their mouth the last 2 weeks. What a way to do it, to knock off a top 25 opponent who's never stepped foot in Fayetteville. A
different outcome could be possible. You never know.
Or they could lose close again, and then everyone's going to hate me, so it's part of it.
Well, we're having fun here on the Hog Roundup. That is going to do it for our show this week. For Tye Richardson, I'm Evan Kamico. We'll see you back here next Thursday on the Hog Roundup.